And you heard right there the minority or majority leader, the leader of the NDC caucus in Parliament, Dr. Kesolato Forsin. My name is Beatrice Edu, and we're just bringing you updates from what's happening in Parliament on the day that the NPP caucus had called on the House to reconvene. If you've been following us on our socials and on TV3, you realize that the Speaker gave that brief comment in his own opening remarks that the NPP caucus that called the House or asked that the House be reconvened was not there, and therefore Parliament had to close again, as it were. Let's go back to the House. Murtala Mohammed is talking.
They had no business, no urgent business, yet they called Parliament. You know, before Parliament sits, they need to go to a committee to determine the business that is supposed to be taken and which will be found in the order paper. The leadership of our caucus were there, the MPP failed to show up. For me, I think that the people of this country should not take them serious. They don't have any respect for Ghanaians. If they had any respect for the people of this country, they wouldn't do what they are doing. And for me, that is a danger to our democratic growth, because in a democracy, you need to respect the most important arms of government, particularly the legislative arm. Assuming the Speaker refused to respect their call, I think that would have been an issue. The Speaker did that was what expected to be done. He called that. I was in my constituency. As a matter of fact, I had to cut short a lot of things to come, only for them not to be here. The two members of Parliament who came, I think I met Honorable Atachia, and I was encouraged by some of the pronouncements he made. The fact that
what were the pronouncements?
The fact that he sees this as something that does not benefit all of us, regardless of our political parties. The fact that he sees that as a danger to our democracy, and unfortunately, the leadership of the NPP caucus, who have, lost touch with the feelings of the people of this country, engage in the things they engage in, is just most unfortunate. And everybody in this country should be worried. And I expect the civil society organizations and very rational individuals in this country to deal with these people. And the electorate, as far as I'm concerned, should show them the right card. The people of this country should let them understand that they cannot be undermined and disrespected in a manner that they have done, and by showing them the exit. And like the majority leaders said, perhaps they are very tired. They are tired of ruling this country, and they just want the 7th of December to come faster than we expect, so that they can just leave. Because it's completely unacceptable what they have done. Completely unacceptable. Do you know how much Parliament will be spending for this recall? I believe Parliament will spend, if not more than 1 million, but at least close to 1 million Ghana cedis. The monies Parliament will be spending for nothing, that money could have been used to provide dialysis machines for people. That money could have been used to take care of certain schools. We still have schools in this country where students are lying or kids are lying on their bellies. That money could have been used to do that. So it is a financial loss they have caused, not just to Parliament, but I believe to the people of this country.
And the expectation going forward, we had the Speaker say that he could not adjourn, he could not continue to adjourn, and so he was just adjourning the current sitting.
The standing orders are very clear, and the Constitution, I think Article 102 is very clear. You must have a particular number to start sittings or to get the quorum. Mind you, the number to get a quorum is different from the number to take decisions. What use will it be to Parliament and to the people of this country if we get the quorum to start business, yet we can't do anything? And I guess that it is not tenable, and that is the reason why the Speaker said what he said. I think that people should be angry. I expect Ghanaians should be very, very angry over this. So why did they do that? Was it deliberate? We could have prevented the state spending this money if they never called. So if they knew that they were not coming to the chamber, why did they do what they do? And someone can argue that, okay, they didn't come to chamber, they could have come at a different time. They didn't even come to consider the business statement. The business committee is made up of the minority leader, Afenyo Markins, and the majority leadership. They were not even there.
That for you is the gravest of all of the sins that you say they've committed.
Sin that is equivalent to this. One, they knew that they were never intended to have any proceedings today. Why did they ask the Speaker to call us to come? They knew that this comes with a huge financial burden to the state. Why did they do that? The cost is huge. They wasted our time. 137 members of parliament were here. And you have other members of parliament from the NPP. I saw Honorable Attach, and I believe, because he's not contesting, all of us, or most of us, are contesting to be re-elected. And we left our constituents. People have left programs that they had. I had a program that I was undertaking. I had to rush back to this place.
Just finally, we're getting indication that possibly the NPP caucus could be addressing the media in relation to all of it. What will be your expectation of them if they are to address the media?
I think the media should boycott any address they are going to have. Another person is coming. The media should boycott it. What are they going to tell the people of this country? You've witnessed what happened. We didn't sign for Speaker to recall Parliament. They did. So why didn't they come? So I'm wondering what they are going to be telling the people of this country. Are they going to tell the people of this country that the Speaker refused to listen to them? They certainly can't tell anybody like that in this country. I think that is an affront to our democracy, and it is an insult to the democratic processes of this country. And the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, if there is any danger to our democracy and the constitution of this country, this is what is happening.
Honorable, thank you. Let's try and come on.
Can't be right. It can't be right.
Honorable, he said you did not.
What is it? The parliament is a master of its own regulations and its own. It's nonsense. That's not the case. The Supreme Court is spoken. The Speaker is supposed to get the House in order to let us do what we are supposed to be doing. Why we are here? Why does he consistently keep
based on the Constitution, but understanding order?
What does he? You see, listen. Be careful. Listen to what you are saying. If I don't expect the Speaker to be saying things like that. He's a seasoned lawyer. He can't be saying that. He doesn't act on the basis of the Constitution, but on the basis of the standing orders. What are the standing orders? The master of the. But that's an entirely different matter. What's an entirely different matter? Supreme Court is simply asked that he should give an order to restore what the situation was. You are not listening. We recall Parliament. The Speaker, when he sat, was supposed to do a first thing, and the first thing was supposed to be this: the decision, the ruling that I made on the particular day has been overset, has been stayed by the Supreme Court, which interprets the Constitution, interprets what we do over here. Accordingly, the status quo ante should be reverted to. So we will know that we are going back to this. Why should the NDC guys rush to go and sit on the side of the NDC bank? What is that? No, but that is not the point. But where were they sitting? Where were the NDC proposing? No, you are not listening to me. You are not listening to me. Let's get the fact right. Where were the NDC guys sitting? Is that where they're supposed to be sitting? But you see, we have a convention. We have a convention. It's not argument, nonsense. You guys are not listening. Supreme Court is speaking. It is not for us members of Parliament on the majority side to be arguing at any point. This is a matter. This is foreclosed. It is completely foreclosed. Supreme Court is speaking. That is the end of the matter.
Why were you not at the business?
That is again. If he said that, listen. The orders of the Supreme Court were directed specifically to the Speaker. It was the Speaker. It wasn't the leadership. It wasn't the clerk. It wasn't the leadership which made that ruling, that decision. It was the Speaker of Parliament who unconstitutionally made a proclamation, whatever it is that he said the last time. The Supreme Court has told him that he was wrong. Restore matters to what they were before you did that.
Line of action for the NPP.
Well, we will cite him for contempt. We will cite the Speaker for contempt. Watch the space.
But he says there was no business before the business committee. The Speaker says the business committee did not meet.
Let's get first.
To put business
first. There is a ruling made by him. The ruling has been overset. You're forcing me to repeat myself so many times. The Supreme Court is spoken. We want the decision of the Supreme Court to be respected.
The Speaker acknowledged the ruling of the Supreme Court 2 weeks ago. He acknowledged, he admitted to the ruling of the Supreme Court.
It is not a question of acknowledgement. It's a question of implementation of the decision of the Supreme Court.
No MPs, none of them
you are not listening. You are not listening.
It is not for me. Have been blocked from coming to Parliament. None of them have come in.
No. He made accessing. You are not listening. You are not listening. I think I'm going to have to say this for the last time because it looks like some of you have become impervious to what is it that. Listen to this. The Speaker made a ruling. It was unconstitutional. It was unlawful. By any account, it was illegal. The Supreme Court, contrary to the assertion by he himself and some members of the minority who keep proclaiming from high roofs and high heaven that the parliament is a master of its own rules and regulations, the Supreme Court is told Babi and parliament that you are not. There is an institution which is the master of the rules of parliament, and that this is what the law is, that you cannot make the decision, the proclamation that you made. I call it proclamation because you say it's a king, it's whatever, it's a lord unto himself, but you made a ruling. It is not right. Supreme Court is telling you it is all right. Go back to that.
The Supreme Court did not. Just briefly, two things.
It will be the interest of Ghanaians for the speaker to respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. Come back to this side rather than continuously adjourning. He is disrespecting the ruling of the Supreme Court.
4 MPs.
You are not listening. You are not listening.
No, when did any of the 4 MPs come in and they were
you know where they were?
Because today the second deputy speaker's aide has been but the second deputy speaker himself has not been in.
You may want to take some medication. It has no point shouting when you are ignorant of the matter. What it is this: it's not for the 4 people to simply show up. The Speaker has made a ruling barring them from coming to the Parliament. Supreme Court is reversed it. It is for the Speaker to sit up there and tell the House that his decision has been reversed, and so
stay. Be reversed if you are not seated.
Honorable, you say you are going to cite the Speaker for contempt.
That is not properly convened.
I mean, you're going
How would the Speaker reverse his decision?
Again, I'm saying that you either want to take leave of your senses or you listen to what I am saying. If you are not prepared to listen to what I'm saying and just listen to your own voices, we're not going to get anywhere. Look at the paucity of cameras. Everybody is listening, but you don't seem to be listening and concentrating on what I'm saying. It is not a question of our presence in there or not. It is for the Speaker. If it is only about 100 people who are coming to the room there, minority and the majority will constitute the composition of the House in its entirety, which never comes in there, provided that we have enough to constitute the business of constitute the House and then start business of the House. We should do it. So even if he had 99, which is 1/3 of what to form the quorum, it was for the Speaker to make the announcement in the House that his ruling has been stayed, has been overset. Accordingly, minority back to where you were, majority back to where you have been. That is the simplest solution that we're talking about.
You say you're going to start briefly.
Yes.
When are you doing this?
Watch the space.
Watch the space. I mean, finally, the Speaker says that the majority has failed to convene a business meeting yesterday, so that they can put the business for this emergency report before the House.
I keep saying that first instance is for the Speaker to declare in that House the same way as Cathedral, the same way he did. And accordingly, come back and sit where we sit. The business of the House.
Honorable, just briefly gave that ruling. He didn't direct where each side of the House should sit. It is the NDC who've taken it upon themselves to sit at the majority side. And so, if he says he's acknowledged,
them to do that. He says acknowledge the ruling in his head.
Just briefly, lastly on the petition which came through for the recall, the Speaker, in reading out the directive, stressed strongly that it was the majority, the second majority whip.
Don't push me.
It was a second majority whip who petitioned.
Where's my car?
Who petitioned him for the Parliament to be recalled. That suggests he's acknowledged you as the majority, hasn't he? Right, it does appear the Honourable K.T. Hammond Just that last question. Just that last question about the speaker acknowledging.
Constitutionally, it's about time he respected the ruling of the Supreme Court.
Just that one question about him acknowledging that it was the majority whip who petitioned him, right? And so the last of the Honourable Katie Hammond, we got the indication, I mentioned again, that the NPP will be addressing a news conference just shortly. Katie Hammond making his way, Adansia Sokwa MP making his way out of here. And so quite interesting the morning up until this point, what we've witnessed and what has been a back and forth in the last few minutes between us journalists and the Honourable Katie Hammond in relation to what has happened. He made his way into Parliament just when the Speaker had adjourned the House again indefinitely.
That dramatic turn of events there in Parliament, as you just watched it on our socials and listened to on Sri FM 92.7. You just heard the Asokwa MP, Katie Hammond there, justifying the stance of the NPP caucus, why the caucus did not show up. You heard him there say that the party will cite the Speaker of Parliament for contempt because the NPP thinks that the Speaker is not respecting the ruling of the Supreme Court. And you heard him before he entered his car. If you were watching us on Facebook, he said that the Speaker is behaving unconstitutionally. Earlier, we also interacted with Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, MP Tamale Central, who had issues with why the NPP caucus did not show up and even went to quantify how much it could cost the country. Almost 1 million cedis, he said, for today's sitting alone. The NDC caucus leader as well, Kesalato Forsin, raised issues about what has transpired in the House today. Let's get a quick analysis of what we have just seen and heard. Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere is a senior lecturer at UCC. He joins us live on the line. Good morning to you, Doc. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Doc.
Good morning, Beatrice.
I know you've been on listening to all the conversations we're having with both the NDC and NPP caucus members from Parliament. I'm wondering what your understanding or interpretation of what has transpired in Parliament is. We've had the Speaker of the House adjourning the House indefinitely again.
Well, let me say good morning to your listeners. The point is that, and I've said time without number, it is not every issue that when you send to court, you are going to get your way. You may get your way, but you may not be able to implement that which you have gotten. This is more political. It needs more shrewd political solution to this than just sorting to the law court. Now, the whole place, you see, what the Speaker has done, and I told you guys, I think yesterday or so, the man is still going to swerve everybody else. And there's definitely going to be a stalemate because he will not be the one to say this is majority and this is minority.
Doc, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt your thought. We want to go back to Parliament. We just saw the former minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, speaking to journalists, and we just want to get the latest from our reporter there, and then we'll come back with this to this conversation.
Quite interesting, chaotic few minutes here in terms of what we've seen, but we can return to you, Martin, in the studio.
All right, we seem to have missed that one, but Doc, please, you were making a point earlier about what ought to be done. Hello, Doc. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Doc, you were making a point earlier. Sorry to have interrupted you. Please go on with your thought.
Yeah, so the point I was making is the fact that it is not everything that we resort to the law court to solve. At least if you look at the history of our courts and the system that we've been operating, most often than not, courts do not really bring finality to issues. And you see, if you look at the intransigent position of the MPP, then obviously there's never going to be any compromise. And unless the Speaker says otherwise, that, well, this is what the Supreme Court says, and as I communicated, I'm equally communicating this to the House. Now, here is the case: you do not have what it takes to do business in the House. So the MPP, they have shot themselves in the foot, and they don't want to eat any humble pie. And it is they who will suffer the most, because if things don't go well, you are in government. You are in government. And so if you listen to the Speaker clearly yesterday, it meant that the MBC, as a caucus, as a minority caucus, have been in the past cooperated with the business of government over the period. But unfortunately, when something happens, then they are hanged as though they are the nation breakers. And I think that the Speaker, rightly pointed out this to all of us, that does not augur well for our democracy, especially in a parliament that is hung. And so I'm not surprised that he has also adjourned the House Senate, because you don't have the numbers to do business. What do you do? Because the MPP caucus wouldn't want to be there unless the Speaker has ruled that they are still in the majority. And the Supreme Court is complicit in all of this. Unfortunately, they are complicit in all of this. How unclear is it that if you are applying 97 H and G, there is no ambiguity in there. What do you intend to interpret? You see, it is because you have been admitting to some of these things. That is why you are the source of the confusion. What stopped the MPP behind the scenes telling the Speaker and the leadership of the other side that, comrades, at this point in time, it is inappropriate that we go on this tangent, because that government business is going to suffer and all those things. This is not a matter of legal interpretation. It is a reality that government business could suffer. That is a reality. So if you understand and appreciate the fact that government business could suffer, then what do? You negotiate. You negotiate. So there can only be a political solution to this problem, but not a legal solution. That is my view.
A political solution and not a legal solution. But I'm sure you heard Katie Hammond there, the MP for Asqua, saying that the Speaker is behaving unconstitutionally.
Well, sometimes when you maybe just want something as a news item, but Honorable Katie Hammond, for me, is an upstart. That in actual fact, he's not someone that you should be interviewing on this kind of. You need people who do not speak in that manner, in that tone, from the other side to speak to. And then probably they could be looking forward to the middle line. Maybe Joe Wise, for example. They can't be preferring the middle line to this. But he speaks in that intransigent mode, as if he holds power to change everything in this country. He does not. That high moral high ground that some of them, are mounted, so to speak, will not in any way solve this problem. You cannot force the Speaker to do that which you think he must do in your favor. And he says that it is not his business to decide who is the majority and who is the minority. Then go to the clerk and go and do that. Let the clerk come and say that. And if that is the case, let the Supreme Court come to Parliament and implement that which they have said. And it is not as if the Supreme Court has said that what they did is unlawful. It says that it should stay execution. And he came up with also a stay of execution of the stay of execution. You saying that his has no merit. Okay, so bring your ruling. That probably will be the best way to solve this particular issue. Now, when you bring your ruling, and it's a matter of interfering in the day-to-day business of Parliament, that is where the problem lies. That is where the problem lies. And so, if you don't interfere in the functioning of Parliament, then there will not be any constitutional crisis. Let Parliament work and do their work.
And indeed, you're just reiterating what the Speaker said yesterday during that press conference there. But when you say dealing with the matter politically, aside from the Speaker reiterating that Parliament has to deal with its own issues, how else did you mean this?
How else what?
How else did you mean it, aside from Parliament dealing with its own issues, when you talk about dealing with this issue politically? We've had some people suggesting that perhaps the president should even come in to speak about it. Recently, we heard people talking about wise men and all of that. How do you see it being looked at beyond Parliament dealing with its own issues, like we heard the Speaker say yesterday?
People must come down from their high horses and behave like there is a nation to run. And the nation runs aground, it affects all of us. It is your term in government that things of that nature are happening. How do I go about it? You are dealing with a speaker who feels that the legislature is not the apron string of either the executive or the judiciary. And he's not ready to accept the terrorism of the judiciary. And if you cannot get this, then I don't know what you intend to solve, how you intend to solve it. This is a political problem. Solve it politically. If you take the president to call the speaker and the chief justice, they sit down, they judge with some other level-headed persons, we intervene, fine. You see, there is no other legal interpretation to this. And the Supreme Court is setting a trap for itself. It may come back to harm them later in some years. That is something that they should be worried about. Because political parties do come and they go. It is a given that it is the president that appointed you, but he doesn't control your brain. You did not become a judge in the Supreme Court just because it was given. It is through your professional, progression. That is how you got there. So for me, if someone appoints me and you not let me work because you always want me to do things your way, I will leave the job for you. That is my style. Because by the time you appointed me, I was not hungry. These are the things that the leadership will have to appreciate and understand. If we are looking at it from a pragmatic perspective, that look, if you allow these four to exit, especially the three to exit, it's going to affect A, B, C, and D. It is true. It is going to affect. So how do you find the middle line? Is the middle line through the court system? Then obviously they will use the court system. And you know how the court system works. At the end of the day, the business of Parliament will not be done.
You heard Katie Hammond also saying that the NPP caucus will cite the Speaker for contempt. I mean, from your experience and from what you said, do you foresee that happening? Will it go through?
Well, then they rather want more constitutional crisis than they want to solve.
And
I think they have people like Katie Hammond. They have become skilled. They cannot really think outside the box, and they think that everything should be their way and no other way. Go and cite the Speaker for contempt. Probably they want some kind of instability in our democracy. Maybe because they are exiting power, so they don't see the need to do the right thing. I don't know.
But if there's instability, it affects everybody, whether or not you are NDC or NPP.
Certainly. So that is why it is more of a political solution than a legal one. So you see, if the Speaker has stopped short at telling all of us that this is majority, this is minority, how do they go to Parliament and do business? Because it is going to create chaos. So if you cannot see the fact that there is that separation of powers, and there is not everything that you wade into, especially when there is nothing to interpret, there is no ambiguity in this, are you not creating an entrapment for yourself as Supreme Court, if not today, in the near future? And I may reiterate this. The way and manner our Chief Justice has been conducting herself and be doing her business and functioning as the number one person, of course, the fourth in order of rank, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, will not be surprised that should there be a change in government, they will use the same law that she's using against her, they will remove her. Because I don't understand why the Chief Justice can tell us and convince us that there's no conflict of interest. In a case that is drawn between MPP and NDC in Parliament, where you have some who not long ago, about 8 years ago, was a parliamentary candidate. You think that the person's professionalism will lead him to decide this or that. Whichever way you look at it, one that is opposed to this will always think that he should not be on the panel. And if the Chief Justice cannot see this and will only rationalize it by making reference to PMT, who is also a judge, make to an NDC, who is also a judge, when these people not empaneled as of judges for this particular case, it is not their professionalism that is called to question. It is about the fact that particular case, he is compromised in terms of his orientation in the past. And no matter how you look at it, the one who is opposed to it will not see that justice has manifestly been done.
To what extent do you think what has happened, or have rather, because there have been a lot of events even leading up to today, to what extent do you think they have dented, as it were, Ghana's governance and democracy? Because the argument is that if you look at the three arms of government as we have now, the executive and the judiciary, if you take out parliament, you're in serious trouble. And it was also an idea that the speaker alluded to even during his press conference yesterday. To what extent has this dented governance and democratic system?
Well, as long as we are not making progress in Parliament, then certainly our democratic tenets, have been dented. The over-enthusiasm of the Supreme Court to wade into matters that affect the presidency or the government leaves much to be desired. But it's like those that affect the government negatively, they are quick to wade into it. So that is why the man, the speaker, is suggesting to all of us that there is that seemingly between the presidency and that of the judiciary. It may not be true, but it is possible because he's giving evidence. That which determines our value system. You are using the same legal system to obstruct the process. That number in Parliament, you are quick to wade into it. Anybody, and this is very commonsensical, that you will have to see it as some kind of political opportunism and an entrapment, if you asked me, of the current Supreme Court, that tomorrow will come to harm their reputation. So, if the Chief Justice has demonstrated this kind of political coloration, do you think that if there is any change, they will want to maintain her? It is not by accident that Georgina Woods was allowed to stay in office, though Mr. Kufuor appointed her. There was nothing like Professor Mills, Mr. Mahama, trying to do something untoward. Why? It is because she behaved and conducted herself in a very professional manner. That is my view. So if tomorrow somebody signs a petition against the Chief Justice that should be removed, you will see they will quote the various sections of the law, and unfortunately, that is a possibility.
Can this harm, as it were, which has been caused, be repaired? And if it can, how?
They should all come down. They are all friends. They have been colleagues over the years in the same parliament. Don't be in a hurry to go to the judiciary as a way of taming the legislature. Afenimaka can decide to take the case out of court and find a way of settling it. So sometimes it is not always through the legislative means that you solve a problem, the legal means that you solve a problem. I think that the speaker, as realistic as he is, we all know that if these three and the NDC person all of them are taken out of Parliament at this crucial hour, definitely government business will suffer. That is a reality. The question is, if that happens, how then do we still do business, government business, without letting it suffer? So it doesn't matter whether you are a minority leader or majority leader. As long as the law says that that is how it should go, why can't we negotiate in the background and say that, look, we know this is what this means, but we panicked. Forgive us. Let us withdraw this case from court and solve it politically. Maybe the Speaker can find another way. That in itself will also be a problem for the future.
But do you really think the majority, the MPP caucus wants to really do this?
Pardon me?
Do you think the MPP wants to do this? This suggestion you're giving out now?
So if you think that the legal solution is all that you think, the problem will not be solved. The problem will not be solved. Citing the Speaker for contempt, you are rather aggravating the matter. Because there could be that constitutional crisis that the Chief Justice referred to, if that is how you want to go. Citing the Speaker for contempt for not announcing on the floor of Parliament that this is what the Supreme Court says and I'm coming to implement it. It is because you also realize that you are on a slippery slope. That is why you want the Speaker to make that pronouncement so that you feel comfortable and go back to Parliament. Until then, you do not know how to solve that problem. So why can't you negotiate? Why can't you negotiate? Is Haruna all of a sudden your enemy? You guys have been talking in the background. Every now and then, before Parliament meets, leadership meets the Speaker. They look at the business of the day, and then they take the issues thereof on the plenary. That is how they've been doing their things. So Parliament understands itself. Why wouldn't you let that remain? Why wouldn't you let that remain? And so, if anything at all, if all this while this problem has not been resolved, it is because we were quick to go to court, thinking that the court was going to give us a field day, of which they did, and now it is not implementable.
And now
there is a change. Yes. It is not implementable.
Now we are learning also that the NPP is expected to hold a press conference, as in the NPP caucus in the House. What do you expect?
I don't know what they intend to say. If that is what they want to do in terms of citing the Speaker for contempt through what K.T. Hammond said, well, so be it. That will not solve the problem. That will not solve the problem. I don't know what they intend to say, because they cannot force the Speaker to do that which they want him to do. It took the Speaker to say that you are the majority group. The minority then did not go to court to suggest that that independent candidate does not have what it takes to caucus. He has what it takes to caucus with the MPP. Why? Because it is in Article 97. 2. The 97, the 1 and the 2. That is why it is. The 2 says that if you want to do A, B, C, and D, you have the liberty to do so once you have the clearance of the mother party. The independent candidate that is not answerable to anyone. So he decided to caucus with the MPP, and then he became a majority group. Why didn't you go to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation? That one, it favored you. So the approbation and the reprobation on the part of the MPP leaves much to be desired. It is not, they are behaving as though they are the fulcrum of wisdom or the fulcrum of law. You see, I don't think that arrogant display, is something that ought to be entertained. And what the Greeks will call as amathia, that is intelligent stupidity. In the sense that you know what is right, but you will want to do that which is evil or that which is bad. That is hamartia in Greek. So at this point in time, unfortunately, this is where you've come to. How do you solve it? Especially when you know that you are in government, you hold the executive, and you want certain bills to go through. You have tax waivers to give. You have some loan contractual arrangement. You have certain bills to pass. And you think that you want to mount the high horses in order to deal with the so-called minority or today's majority. I don't think that is the best way to go.
Doc, in the midst of all of this, today is just 30 days to the general election, and the MPs are already in their constituencies campaigning. To what extent do you think what's happening in Parliament could affect the fortunes of the MPs in their various constituencies?
Well, certainly, it will affect them big time, because probably there are certain last meetings that you may want to have access to, of which you cannot have, just because you don't have access to Parliament to get all these things through. And so, obviously, there are people who do not, believe the MPP. And if you look at the Afrobarometer that came, what Ghanaians said is that they want someone with character and someone they can trust. And if you look at the ranking that they give MPP as an institution, it is the lowest. They said they are not trustworthy. So that in itself is worrying. As far as the image of the MPP in government is concerned, it is worrying. So this is the least that you want to do, especially when you are dealing with your compeers. You are dealing with your compeers. It's just like a primus inter pares. First among equals. That is what you should appreciate. What stops you from negotiating? You are too arrogant. That arrogant display will not solve this problem. It is definitely going to affect them, especially those in government. Especially those in government. And those who are making pronouncements here and there, that do not sit well with so many Ghanaians. And if what has happened to the Democrats is anything to go by, they should sit down and eat humble pie and find a political solution to this problem.
They should sit down, eat a humble pie, and find a political solution to this problem. Doc, I don't want you to go away. I'll come back to ask you my last question, but I just want us to listen to exactly what the Speaker said before he adjourned the House indefinitely again.
Unfortunately, the signatories who made the request have not shown up, and therefore matters that they wanted us to handle, which are admitted for the consideration of the Business Committee, are not on the order paper, and in fact there's no order paper for today because the Business Committee could not meet due to the absence of the people who requested for the recall. And as you can see, one side of the House is completely empty. In view of this, we have, as usual, got a quorum to sit. But we have no business before us to transact, because the Business Committee, as you know, they prepare a report, and this report is adopted by the House as business agreed by the House to transact during the course of the week. In the absence of that, there is no other authority that can put business before you which you have not adopted to transact. In view of the failure of the Business Committee to sit as a result of the refusal of those who requested for the recall to show up, we are compelled to once again adjourn the sitting of the House. Knowing the challenges we are facing, it is not advisable to be adjourning from day to day. And so I'll proceed once more to adjourn the meeting indefinitely. And the meeting, this extraordinary meeting, is accordingly adjourned.
And you heard the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Alban Bagbin. Let me just get a final word from Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, and we'll cross over to the midday news. We actually continue with the midday news here. Doc, did you hear a man who just was doing his job or genuinely disappointed at the turn of event? Hello? Okay, Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, we seem to have lost him on the line. Okay, Doc, you're on. I was just asking you a brief question in like a minute. We're going to continue with the midday news. Whether you heard a man who was just doing his job, as in the Speaker of Parliament, or somebody disappointed at the turn of events?
Well, I think that when we talk of people who have emotional maturity, I think he's one. And therefore, he will not be moved by emotionalism. And I think he referred to one or some issue as some kind of sensationalism, and that we should eschew sensationalism out of this particular issue and then find a middle line to deal with it. I think he's performing his function as the Speaker of Parliament. I saw it coming, but there's definitely going to be another adjournment. You see, finally, my dear Beatrice, the NPP that is struggling with all of this. Look, when they convene and they make them the majority, for example, are you there?
I can hear you clearly. Please go on with your point.
When they make them the majority, Cynthia or Asante, look, the MDC can ensure that before the tax waivers, for example, come to pass, they will want to vote on it. And trust you me, the MPP will not win.
As in Parliament?
If you have those controversial issues, that will need the compromise of the other side. That is not the way to go about it. I hope you get what I'm saying, because you don't have the numbers. So deal with the issue from a political perspective by negotiating, compromising, and building consensus. That is the speech Afenyamakins gave when he was accepting, the appointment as the majority leader.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere. Thank you so much for continuing with us. Now let's bring you the top story of the day. And Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin has yet again adjourned proceedings indefinitely moment after the House reconvened for business. MPs were summoned for an extraordinary session today upon the request by the New Patriotic Party caucus. The caucus, in its request, cited urgent government business, including 6 bills needing urgent consideration. It followed the October 22 adjournment by the Speaker due to lack of quorum to take decisions after a walkout by the NPP caucus over the vacant seat controversy. Well, the House reconvened today, as you're well aware of. However, the NPP side, but for one MP, Atachia, failed to show up in the chamber, prompting another adjournment. Listen to the Speaker as he made the announcement earlier.
Unfortunately, the signatories who made the request have not shown up, and therefore matters that they wanted us to handle, which are admitted for the consideration of the business committee are not on the order paper, and in fact there's no order paper for today because the business committee could not meet due to the absence of the people who requested for the recall. And as you can see, one side of the house is completely empty. In view of this, we have, as usual, got a quorum to sit, but we have no business before us to transact, because the business committee, as you know, they prepare a report, and this report is adopted by the House as business agreed by the House to transact during the course of the week. In the absence of that, there is no other authority that can put business before you which you have not adopted to transact. In view of the failure of the business committee to sit as a result of the refusal of those who requested for the recall to show up, we are compelled to once again adjourn the sitting of the House. Knowing the challenges we are facing, it is not advisable to be adjourning from day to day. And so I'll proceed once more to adjourn the meeting indefinitely. And the meeting, this extraordinary meeting, is accordingly adjourned.
And you heard the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin. Well, the NDC caucus has condemned their counterpart for not turning up and wasting everybody's time.
To show up. Clearly, what we are seeing here is an abuse of the Constitution and the standing orders of Ghana's Parliament. The NPP Minority Caucus have indeed caused financial loss to the state and to us, the NDC members of Parliament, and to the people of Ghana. We say this because these recalls cost Ghana money. This is not the first time that they have done this. They've done this a couple of times, but we see nothing than disrespect. We call on the people of Ghana to see the behavior of the NPP and punish them accordingly. They have certainly, everything shows that the NPP are tired, they are fed up, and they are not ready to work for the people. They are bereft of ideas and they are short of vision. They cannot solve the suffering of the people. All what they do out there during campaigns, in spite of the hashing, is to sing and dance Osisifia. That's all what they do. In times like this, when the ordinary Ghanaian is struggling to survive, they are dancing and singing Osisifia and sharing money. We want Ghanaians to see them as such and vote against them and sack them. Because clearly, you can see, we have over 100 NDC MPs here today out of the 137, and we are determined to do what is right. But colleagues, let me make this point to the people of Ghana. Let no one deceive you that the NDC is here to obstruct the people's business.
And you heard that Dr. Kesela Tuforsen, he's the leader of the NDC caucus in Parliament. Let's bring you some more on this. Noble Crosby Annan is a man who has been in the House for us since morning. He joins us live on the line. Crosby, can you tell us really what has been the reaction of the caucuses to this adjournment beyond what we just heard Dr. Kesela Tuforsen say?
Well, so at the moment, the NPP caucus of the House is addressing the press reacting.
Crosby, I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt you. Let me go to Parliament now because Alexander Panyo-Malkin, the leader of the NPP, is speaking.
Declared the NDC as the majority. Neither has he expressed a constitutional opinion on those 4 individuals, and that what he did amounted to an opinion that he expressed on the statement by Honorable Kesil Atufosin. At the said pre-sitting meeting, I, on behalf of my colleagues, the majority, inquired from Mr. Speaker whether our friends who were seated to his right would be allowed by him to sit there, because that was not their rightful place in view of his own admission that he had not proclaimed them as such nor declared them as such. Speaker responded that indeed sitting arrangement of Parliament was a responsibility of the clerk to Parliament. This took me to the next step of inquiring from the clerk whether he allowed the NDC minority to sit on our seats. He said, indeed, we had our name tags, that is the MPP majority, had their name tags at those seats that we already occupied, and that it was not he who did that. So obviously, one was expecting Mr. Speaker to direct the NDC to do the right thing. He refused. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker engaged the Council of State, or perhaps let me say the Council of State held meetings with Mr. Speaker as a majority leader and leader of government business and leader of the House. I had the opportunity to also meet with them. The understanding I had from the meeting as a sequel to the meeting they had already held with Mr. Speaker was to the effect that Mr. Speaker will direct the NDC minority to sit at their right place, which is the left of Mr. Speaker. That was the understanding I had. I subsequently had a call from the Peace Council. The Peace Council informed me that they had engaged Mr. Speaker on the issue before Parliament, and Mr. Speaker had indeed indicated to the Peace Council that he had not ruled, neither has he proclaimed the NDC minority, and that should we resume or should Parliament reconvene, the NDC minority will go back to their seats. Several other prominent Ghanaians, who for some good reasons I would not want to mention their names, who had engaged Speaker on this matter, had also reached out to us, the majority caucus, and assured us that Mr. Speaker's engagement with them resulted in he admitting that indeed there was no such ruling, which ruling would now proclaim the NDC as a so-called new majority. Now, from the horse's own mouth, granted that all these prominent people misrepresented to us, the majority. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker himself, in his press conference in the afternoon, enumerated a number of things. Amongst them, he said he had not made a ruling. He told the whole of the country that he had not made a ruling. So, if he claims that what he did was a formal communication in response to a statement from the minority leader, then why is he supervising chaos in the House? What Mr. Speaker did today amount to supervising chaos and bringing the image of democracy to disrepute. Yes. The NDC minority members were all over claiming that we, the majority, did not attend a so-called business committee meeting that they called. Who are they? when did we constitute a new committee in Parliament? I chaired the Business Committee of Parliament. And when the clerk to Parliament asked for the Business Committee meeting, I was very explicit that the subject matter of the recall, which was approved by Mr. Speaker, is a very matter for consideration. So there's no need to have another Business Committee. Business Committee is to decide on the business of the House. On this occasion, you have made an application, which application has been granted. And the items that were approved were the very things to be decided on. So I directed that the order paper should be printed to reflect all those items. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker himself read the two letters, the first one and the second one that amended the first, and indicated to the whole country that indeed our deputy majority whip, the second deputy majority whip, had actually sent those letters to him. He acknowledged him as such. Clearly, the NDC is on a warpath. They want confusion in this country.
The Speaker particularly.
They want lawlessness in this country. And all these are being supervised by Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
It is sad. It is very sad. And I would want to entreat you, the media, to call them out, to call the NDC out, to call Mr. Speaker out. Because what is it? What at all is the issue? You have made a ruling which you now say is an opinion. We disagreed with you. We've gone to another forum where, by law, that forum has the power to interpret the law. We respected Mr. Speaker's ruling. In all of these, my first interview after his ruling was to the fact that I respect him, I disagree with him, therefore my colleagues and I were withdrawing from the chamber and will pursue the matter at the Supreme Court, which matter he was already aware was pending at the Supreme Court. And I will repeat the point I made a week ago. Mr. Speaker had assured me in the presence of the second deputy speaker, Honorable Amwakwe Siama, in his office, that in view of the pendency of the suit, although the NDC had filed that petition, which petition was mounted by Harun Idrisu, he would hear them, but will wait and abide the decision of the court. I was fair enough, I was transparent enough to have engaged him as a head of this assembly, that because Haruna had raised the issue and to avoid confusion, I was going to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation. I did not go to Supreme Court in bad faith. And it wasn't the case that a matter was happening in Parliament and I ran away to the Supreme Court. I ran away from Parliament to Supreme Court to seek refuge. No, I foresaw confusion. And indeed, what Harun Idrisu filed, why did they set it aside? Harun Idrisu had initiated a process under Order 99 of our rules, which will require a process to be set in motion. Why did they suddenly come under Order 93, which allows for a statement? When, in the history of this Parliament, since 1992, did a statement metamorphose into a motion, which motion now will require a ruling? You see,
for you.
Speaker is setting the country on fire. Yes. Yesterday, we were disappointed with his non-reconciliatory posture during this press conference. Indeed, we, the majority caucus, call on Mr. Speaker one more time to demonstrate statesmanship. Yes. We want Mr. Speaker to know that although we were not happy on the day he was elected, some of our colleagues perhaps has seen something good in him. It wasn't the NDC that put him there for him to do the bidding of the NDC. Perhaps people felt that he could be someone who will bring all of us together. Yes. There are things that we cannot say into the camera. But Mr. Speaker is hurting democracy.
Yes.
What Mr. Speaker is doing is to rehearse what the NDC is likely to do should they lose power, to bring chaos, to cause confusion. How can Mr. Speaker say that he respects the Constitution, but he will not subject himself to the dictates of the judiciary? How can you say that the judiciary is in collusion, is colliding with the president, and you mention the president as a person, as an individual? How? What Mr. Speaker is doing is in bad faith. First of all, he subjected himself to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And after losing at the Supreme Court, he turns around to attack the Supreme Court. His own lawyer, my respected senior Thaddeus Sori, in court, argued forcefully that Mr. Speaker made a ruling, and he sought to justify the so-called ruling and even challenge the jurisdiction of the court in entertaining my application. For him, the matter comes under Article 99 of the Constitution and not under Article 197. 97 G and H of the Constitution. To the NDC lawyer, to the Speaker's lawyer, who had received firm instructions from the Speaker, the position of the Speaker was home and dry, was on all fours right, and that Mr. Speaker had ruled, and that those members could not come to Parliament. Again, he had emphasized that the right forum was the High Court. Yes. All these points canvassed by Mr. Speaker's lawyer were overruled. The matter was heard in the full glare of the public. There was a live broadcast of the Supreme Court proceedings of that day. The ruling of the Supreme Court has been procured by me as plaintiff. The Supreme Court bailiff has served the ruling, the second ruling, on Mr. Speaker. His lawyers were given up to 3rd of November to file their written submissions, statements of case in defense, if any. So what are all these, perhaps I call it ex cathedra statement of Speaker, creating an impression as though those statements he's making are an authority on their own? It cannot be. A true Democrat will respect the rule of law.
Yes.
And that is why we decided to respect him. You know, ladies and gentlemen of the press, NPP, our tradition is to respect rule of law. Yes. It's out of deference to Mr. Speaker. That is why we did not enter the chamber. That we should share in that chaos theater with them. Never. We won't do that. We will not. MPP will not. We will not. Therefore, don't be swayed by their lies and their propaganda. The chaos they started is what they want to end. We will not allow that. We believe that we have to win the elections right at the polling station, and would go and work. Right now, what the NDC has done, basically, are the following. One, they don't want Ghanaians to receive their pay, public servants, because they know that after the elections, there will be no budget. And to be able to pay Ghanaian workers, there will be the need for parliamentary approval of the budget first quarter. That will be on account, appropriation on account. That's it's a constitutional requirement. So that is what they want. They want to stampede it. Two, they want to again create a certain impression that Ghana is lawless. Ghana is not lawless. We will not allow them to give a wrong impression to the international community. We will respect the law. Three, all these businessmen, you know, their fear is that under the 1D, 1F, these companies are going to create jobs. These companies will employ people. So their fear is that should these be addressed it will mean that all their propaganda of unemployment would fall flat. So further to frustrate businessmen and drive them away. Are these Democrats?
No.
Now there are important things to do. We have the free SHS bill, which is before Parliament. Their main aim is to conspire with Mr. Speaker to prevent the free SHS bill from being passed. And in an unlikely situation where they see the light of day in the election, cancel it. That, oh, after all, there's no law backing it. Their main target is a free SHS bill. That is why there was a pre-announcement of its laying in Parliament, and you remember how they fought against it. So it's an opportunity for them to, as it were, prevent the free SHS bill from being passed. And if they succeed in doing that, to them, in their wishful minds, in their wishful thinking, parents will get upset and then say that after all, the free SHS was not working. The free SHS has benefited many Ghanaians, in spite of the challenges. We know as a country, the reforms that have been made by two ministers, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh and Dr. Yao Educhum. These two gentlemen who were assigned to superintend over the education ministry have done so well. And the outcome of their works is known to all Ghanaians. This is what the NDC want to set back. Thank you very much indeed. I would want... Now, they also made some noise in the chamber. They also made, they double talk. They double talk. They do double speaking, double talking. Whenever a person lies, he fails to even be inconsistent. In the chamber, where they rushed to go and sit. And again, the clerk this morning, we pre-inspected the chamber. The clerk diligently arranged our name tags at where they were. They came and they physically removed them. And this is where, with the greatest respect and in all humility and in all modesty, my dear friends in the media, help us to shape opinion in the right way.
Get the message across properly.
Get the message across. They came in there and unlawfully removed our name tags, pulled their chairs to our place and sat on our seats. And Speaker, the cameras, I was watching in my office, and I'm sure you guys are set up. You set your cameras up proud to Mr. Speaker's arrival. You saw what happened. Let the Ghanaian people know. Now they said our members were not present. They claimed that those, if indeed the Supreme Court had ruled, why were those members who were affected not in the chamber? Because Mr. Speaker has said nothing about them. This is what Kwame Agboja, making that point. Honorable Kwame Agboja said the members have had a favorable ruling from the Supreme Court, so they should have come. Really, if the Supreme Court ruling is being respected by them, why did they move to the right of Mr. Speaker?
Why therefore?
My respected colleague Cynthia Morrison is here. I said it in my plaint in court that she remains a member of our caucus. And she's here with us as a majority caucus. Nothing short of that. So I would want you to take note. Now, we look forward to engaging Mr. Speaker in the next few hours and days. We pray that he does the needful. If he doesn't do the needful, we will continue to rely on the law to get the right things done. The partisan politics that they are festing on us in the chamber must cease, must end. Parliament is a chamber for decent people. Parliament is a chamber for tolerant Democrats. Parliament is a chamber for people who want nation building without taking advantage of situations to score cheap political points. We will yield to these high values and high tenets of democracy. Thank you very much.
Special coverage of the midday news here on 3FM 92.7. You just heard Alexander Apanyomarkin, the leader of the NPP caucus in Parliament. His last words in summary: Parliament is not a place for cheap politics. So that was just an immediate press conference responding to what transpired in Parliament today when the Speaker reconvened the House but had to adjourn it. What, he's speaking again. Let's go back.
Get him to appreciate. Let's get him to appreciate the consequences of not obeying the Supreme Court decision, and let us also pray that civil society and Ghanaians in general will prevail upon the NDC lawless minority to know that decency is a rule of the game. Thank you very much. She's a member of Parliament. Listen. Wait. You see, wait. I will not in any way attack any media house. But I believe that the discourse is a two-way traffic. For instance, I won't mention that station's name, but a station invited me. And when I went for a program, after we had agreed on the issues, they now said to me that a big man from that station says that they should address me as leader of MPP caucus. And I asked that a Speaker of Parliament has made a pronouncement. Granted, at the first instance, he was right. A superior court has overruled him. So the status quo has been restored. Further, the Speaker has challenged the first decision of the court. All right? And that has been adjudicated upon. And it has been determined. So 2 rulings have come out after his ruling, which he calls an opinion. Is there an issue of who is in majority and minority? You, the media, I want to ask you. So I would plead with you, no matter how you feel, let us all help with the law. We all know in the US, in the US, I'm referring the media to something that happened in the US. We all know that CNN leans towards the Democrats. If you watch CNN carefully, you will know that CNN leans towards the Democrats and Fox leans towards the Republicans. But as soon as Trump was elected, CNN put all their biases aside and went straight. In fact, they were among the first news, let me finish, to have projected Trump's victory in spite of all their disagreement with Trump's views or political views. You get my point? And I would want to urge on you, the media, to do same. You may not be in support of MPP. I agree. Yena dream to me here baako. Yena media yen to me can say media be antro dia MPP for there. But se court kasa. Me be situation a media be trust say Apanyomarkin, leader of MPP group. Apanyomarkin ni MPP for a majority. Exactly. And that is the law. Exactly. Mumbwa, Speaker of Fuma Monka, yes, we are Fuma Monka, Na Ghana ba ku pe na ewo. Dia NDC for ne here no person Ghana ejeto ho fom.
No one can challenge so wafom on the sun so by.
Dia speaker di kan ye no. Speaker, dia speaker di kan ye no. Ye yan kontokwa o. Oka di oka ye no. Ye ndidi na tem. Ye ka chen say speaker. Wo dia waka. Ye di court. Na court ebia asem no. Court edi kan ebia asem no. Speaker si on ti ase of a lawyer. Emma lawyer no call court. Eko kasama on no speaker said there be the Supreme Court ka no.
Coverage of Parliament here on True FM 92.7. My name is Beatrice Edu. Thank you so much for joining us today. Standing by is Michael Obodu with Business. Don't go away.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to Business Daily here on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, local inflation outpaces imported goods by 8.3 percentage points, raising concerns over eroding purchasing power, particularly for low-income households.
Are important. What it means is that the prices that we churn out are essentially affected by these imported raw materials.
Also, Africa Climate Action Initiative calls for meat tax at COP29 to curb climate impact.
If you go to OECD countries, that is Europe and North America and China, they consume a lot of meat that release a lot of greenhouse gases into the environment. Now, Africa, as we are the more vulnerable when it comes to climate change. We suffer a lot on the effect of climate change, and so we are advocating that these countries, they tax their meat consumption, and the money that will come out of that we use to finance climate adaptation and
Plus, Ghana's cocoa production poised for rebound in 2024-2025 season. I am Michael Obodu. I bring you details of our top stories and more shortly. Please, don't go anywhere. Well, thank you so much for your time, and straight into our top story. Recent data from the Ghana Statistical Service reveals a concerning trend in consumer inflation. Locally produced items continue to experience significantly higher inflation rates compared to imported goods. The October 2024 inflation figures from the Ghana Statistical Service highlight this disparity. Inflation for locally produced items was a staggering 8.3 percentage points higher than that of imported items. Professor Samuel Kobne Nim is government statistician.
from a locally produced item perspective and an imported item perspective, where we have recorded an 8.3 percentage point difference between inflation for locally produced items, which stood at 24.6%, relative to inflation for imported items, which stood at 16.3% for the month of October 2024. On a month-on-month basis, we have recorded a 1.9 percentage point drop in a month-on-month rate of inflation, as month-on-month rate of inflation has decreased from 2.8% in September 2024 to 0.9% for October 2024.
So that was government statistician Professor Samuel Kobna-Enim speaking there. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Greater Accra branch of the Association of Ghana Industries AGI, Chuna Makpelo, has attributed the situation to non-supportive business policies such as high and multiple taxes. This widening gap between the inflation rates of domestic and imported goods is a cause for worry, as it can erode purchasing power, particularly for low-income households that rely heavily on locally produced goods.
Most of the raw materials that local industries use are imported. What it means is that the prices that we churn out are essentially affected by these imported raw materials. And so whilst local industry may wish to have a more stabilized price regime, but because of the exchange rate situation we face and the depreciation of the cedi, we are unable to cope with a stabilized price regime. And another thing that affects this inflationary situation has to do with the myriad of taxes that has to be paid by local industries. If you see how even the VAT, which is an input taxation, is calculated, you see that there's always this 6% that we're unable to account for. And all of these taxes that we have to deal with on a daily basis are actually affecting the extent to which our prices are determined. So all of these are actually contributing to why we will have an inflationary situation that is higher than that of an imported product.
So that was the Greater Accra chairman of the Association of Ghana Industries AGI, Chuna Makpelo, speaking there. Away from that, the Africa Climate Action Initiative is pushing for meat to be taxed in Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD member countries in China at the upcoming 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP29, in Baku, Azerbaijan, to promote responsible consumption and mitigate climate impact in Ghana and other African countries. According to Executive Director Nana Yao the move has become necessary as meat consumption in OECD countries and China have moved above the limits of global and national dietary recommendations as well as planetary health recommendations.
If you go to OECD countries, that is Europe and North America and China, they consume a lot of meat that release a lot of greenhouse gases into the environment. Now, Africa, as we are the more vulnerable when it comes to climate change. We suffer a lot on the effect of climate change, and so we are advocating that these countries, they tax their meat consumption, and the money that will come out of that we use to finance climate adaptation and resilience in countries in Africa and Ghana as a whole. So we are saying that at COP, we are going to advocate for the taxation on meat so that the money that will be raised will be used to finance climate effects in Africa and elsewhere.
So that was the Executive Director of Africa Climate Action Initiative, Nanaya Ofori-Ejay, speaking there. After a dismal 2023-2024 crop season, Ghana's cocoa production is expected to bounce back in the 2024-2025 season, driven by favorable weather conditions and improved farming practices. Cocoa Board, local farmers and buyers anticipate a significant increase in output despite lingering challenges. The following 3 Business News Desk report has more.
Ghana's cocoa industry, once a major economic driver, is poised for a resurgence in the 2024-2025 crop season. Favorable weather conditions, coupled with timely use of agricultural inputs, have led to healthier cocoa trees and increased pod production. Ghana, the world's second largest cocoa producer, saw its output plummeted to a 20-year low in June, with production falling below 55% of its average seasonal output. Neighboring Ivory Coast, the leading cocoa producer, faces similar challenges, resulting in a 4-year global cocoa market supply deficit. While the outlook is promising, challenges continue to loom over the industry. The threat of black pod disease remains a major concern. Additionally, smuggling of cocoa beans to neighboring countries persists, depriving government of much-needed revenue. To address these issues, government, through the Cocoa Board, is implementing measures to combat smuggling and promote sustainable cocoa farming practices. Farmers are also being encouraged to adopt modern agricultural techniques to improve yields and quality. Farmers are also being encouraged to adopt modern agricultural techniques to improve yields and quality. Cocoa Board has observed the crop is amazing. The trees are productive, with not less than 50 pods per tree. A farmer reports harvesting 500 bags in September, compared to 820 bags in the entire 2023-2024 season. If the current positive trend continues, Ghana's cocoa industry could experience a significant rebound.
And that was a 3 Business News Desk report, bringing an end to Business Daily here on 3FM 92.7. For more business stories, please check out our website at 3news.com/business. I am Michael Obodu. Thank you for listening. As always, please stay safe. Up next is Urban Blend with Ras Kobe. Please stay tuned.